And at the core of who we are all the same. We're all on the same journey. It helps me when I struggle with that whole comparison game and that imposter syndrome. It helps remind me of who I am at the core and where my passion comes from and why I fight so hard to keep believing in myself. Remember, no one's going to believe in me more than me. No one's going to believe you more than you. No one is going to fight for me more than me. No one is going to push me more than me. I can have a community of friends around me who understand, but that belief in myself needs to be there first before I can believe it even from others.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to a special episode of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is episode 206, and I am recording this on Tuesday, August 17th. Now, I just finished a fascinating weekend at When Words Collide. It's a conference I've been going to since 2014, and it's one of my favorite conferences that I get to attend every year. It's normally held in Calgary, Alberta, upwards of 700 to 800 people, but of course there were over 1,200 people registered this year because, due to the global pandemic, it was moved into a virtual space, which actually meant for many happy people an opportunity to attend for free from anywhere in the world. Now, I was crazy busy for this conference. It all started Thursday night when I was the host and MC of the readings of the special guests of honor. And then on the Friday evening, I had the honor of sort of hosting from behind the scenes, more producing the technical aspects. Randy McCharles, who is the chair of When Words Collide, he was the actual MC of the keynote talks. And that's what I'm featuring here. This is a keynote. So just to give you an idea, so the guests of honor this year were Kathy Ace, Vicki Delaney, Steena Holmes, Fonda Lee, Dave Reynolds, and Morgan Rhodes. Fascinating readings and fascinating keynotes. There will be a link to the video that I produced for When Words Collide from the When Words Collide YouTube page if you want to watch them all. But this was the final keynote of the evening, and it was Steena Holmes. Now, you may remember Steena. She has been on the Stark Reflections podcast many, many moons ago because we had a chance to reconnect a little bit during When Words Collide. I did get her to agree to come back on the Stark Reflections podcast, so she will be appearing in a chat with me in a forthcoming episode. But this was her closing keynote talk, and it was shortly after listening to it live that I thought, oh my goodness, my listeners are going to love this. They're going to love this. It's a very motivational talk. It's a very wonderful talk about the idea that no one will believe in you more than you. So I am going to reflect a little bit on this because I can't help but reflect on it. But I love this motivational keynote talk from Steena Holmes. So without further ado, why don't we get right in to the talk from Steena.
One thing that I have been saying since the beginning of my writing career, and it's something that you'll often hear me say when I'm speaking at conferences, and I know I've said it a couple times during some of the classes that I've done. No one will believe in you more than you. I've said it from the very beginning. I think I'm going to continue to say it as long as I keep writing. I believe it more now than I did before, only because I've realized how much I need to believe in myself. This strong belief is why I pushed myself to learn my craft. It's why I joined writing groups and critique groups to put my writing out there and get demolished and destroyed and be forced to write right. It's why I spent years submitting to agents and pushed past 307 rejections. Yes, you heard me right. 307 rejections for one book. I'm kind of stubborn and I don't like being told no. I knew that this book I wrote was worth it. I knew readers would love it. And I knew I would only need one agent to agree with me. So I kept trying. 307. The strong belief in myself is why I eventually realized that after 307 rejections, no one else was going to believe in this book more than me. And if that was the case, then I needed to prove it. So I pulled it. I had 7 agents who had requested for a full. They took their time reading it. I gave myself a deadline. And I said, I think it was like March 1st or March 31st. If no one offered, I was going to pull it and self-publish it myself. That's what I did. I self-published it. It skyrocketed. It did really well. And I had a lot of those agents come back and be like, actually, we are interested. This self-belief in myself, it's why I later decided to accept an offer. Not the one with the most money, but the one with the most potential to find readers for my book. It's also the same reason, the same self-belief, why after 9 books, I stepped back from a contract that I knew wasn't healthy for me at the time. It's also why I fired my then agent. This belief, this no one is going to believe in me more than me, is what has kept my ass in the chair. It's what forced me to write book after book and take class after class and work with editor after editor to improve my writing, to improve my knowledge of the craft, to make sure I write the absolute best story for my reader. It's why, after walking away from my contract, after walking away from my agent, it's why I published a book I wanted to write, a book I needed to write. It's why I pushed through that downward journey I was on when I knew I needed to put my own mental health first. I needed to rediscover who I was as an author after way too long of following someone else's conviction of who I should be as an author. No one will believe in you more than you. And from anything, I hope that you will take this and hold it close. No one will believe in you more than you. No one will push you more than you. No one will fight for you more than you. But what happens when you stop being your biggest cheerleader? What happens when you stop believing in yourself, when you stop pushing yourself, and when you stop fighting for yourself? It does happen, and it will. I can promise you that. It doesn't matter where you are in your journey. You may be in your first year, maybe in your 30th year. You may be writing your first book. You may have put out 40 books. Eventually along your journey, it's going to happen for one reason or another. You're going to get dropped by an agent. You're not going to. You could get dropped by an agent. You could get dropped by a publisher. COVID happens when your debut is about to be released. A family crisis will demand your attention, and your contracts and writing have to take a back seat. Life happens. Life is always going to happen. I can tell you from experience what happens when you stop believing in yourself, at least when it comes to your writing career. It kind of takes a nosedive. You start doubting yourself and your abilities. You wonder what has happened to you. What has happened to that skill that you spent years honing? You retreat, you pull away, and you even question if you're ever going to write again. And I know, silly, because we're creatives and writing is what we do. But yes, you're going to wonder, am I ever going to write again? Can I write again? You're going to struggle with those empty pages, wondering, if the words that you put on there are any worth it or not. You're going to look for other means to fill up that part of your soul that writing used to fill, all the while knowing nothing can replace that drive, that need, or that desire to write. I wish someone had told me way back in the beginning, that being a writer was one of the hardest jobs around. I wish someone had taken my hand, sat me down over coffee or wine or both, or maybe we could have done like a very long day and they could have just given me these honest talks that I needed, and explain in very clear terms that the high highs can become low lows, but that success or failure does not change who you are in your core. In your core, in our core, we're writers, we're creatives. We have this passion for storytelling that will never disappear. So I have a question. Do you believe in yourself? I think you do because you're here. I hope you do because you're here. How often do you remind yourself, this is good, how often do you remind yourself that you are doing the one thing almost everyone else wishes they could do but don't? How often do you tell someone, I'm a writer, and they come back and say, oh, I've always wanted to write. I have this story that, I think it would be so good, and they go on and on and on about it. And then they're like, so, what do you write? They really don't care. They just wanted to tell you that they could have been a writer if they had decided to make the effort. When people tell me that now, I nod, I smile, I say, yay you, and then I have a simple question for them. What's stopping you? If you really wanted to write a book, what's stopping you? So this is why I say we have the hardest job. We are doing what everyone else wants to do, but they don't. We put in those hours. We struggle over words. We struggle over those sentence structures. We will write and rewrite some more. We sacrifice family time and personal time in order to get a few words written every single day. We do what needs done in order to tell that story growing inside of us, because that's who we are. We are writers. It doesn't matter what success I've seen in my career so far. I know I've had the high highs, I've also had low lows. Doesn't matter how many books I've written, doesn't matter how many contracts I've had, or the size of audience I've built. Who I am and what I've managed to do is really no different than who you are and what you can do. We're all walking the same path. We all start off with the same blank page. We struggle to figure out how to make this shrug or that smile different than the last one. We all struggle with the imposter syndrome at some point in our writing career. And I know I have. In fact, I still do. And I am right now, this minute, especially after listening to everyone else speak. Who am I to be here speaking with you about something someone else more knowledgeable can give insight to? Who am I to teach on branding and marketing when I've had more failures than successes? Who am I to teach about making those first chapters shine when it takes me days, weeks, hours to be happy with my own? My first book is a dream come true type story. It took me 6 months to write. I entered into a contest, much like what Kathy did, and I won a publishing contract. Fabulous. It changed my life. I thought, yay me. I finally found something I can do, something that's mine. And then it took me another 5 years to write my next book. Even now, after having 40 books published under different names, I have been working on a book for the past 2 years that I've just recently decided to put aside because there's something wrong with it and I can't figure it out. I've rewritten it 3 times and it's still not working. Me, after publishing so many books, this is the first time I've ever done this, put a book to the side. I wrote a crappy book. And it's not my first. When I first started, I have loads of books that never got completed. This is my first time finishing a book like this. I have a feeling it's not going to be my last either. I'm no superstar. I'm also not lucky. It wasn't luck that made my debut women's fiction novel jump the charts and garner attention. I spent years ass in chair. The ebbs and flows of my career, the highs and the lows, it happens to everyone in this business. I am you, you are me. Don't roll your eyes when I say that. We're no different than anyone else within our small writing community, and it really is small. I may have a strength that helps me when it comes to connecting with my readers and then marketing my books. You may have a strength that helps you to write those books that hit a note and make a difference in someone's life. We all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. No one is better than the other. We just have a different way to take this journey that we're all on. And that's why I'm here. I can push past the imposter syndrome voice that's screaming in my head. I'm here to help someone else succeed in an area that's my strength, and it may be your weakness. I'm here to share the lessons I've learned, the lessons that might help you not take the same path that I've had to trip over in my journey. What I love about our community is that connectiveness. And at the core of who we are all the same. We're all on the same journey. I wrote something that I want to share with you, something that helps remind me of who I am. It helps me when I struggle with that whole comparison game and that imposter syndrome. It helps remind me of who I am at the core and where my passion comes from and why I fight so hard to keep believing in myself. Remember, no one's going to believe in me more than me. No one's going to believe you more than you. No one is going to fight for me more than me. No one is going to push me more than me. I can have a community of friends around me who understand, but that belief in myself needs to be there first before I can believe it even from others. So here I go. Originally, I wrote this as who I am, and I'm changing it to who are we? Who are we as writers? I hope that you guys can see some resemblance in here. I hope I'm not just talking about myself. We are dreamers, storytellers, lost art specialists in a world of electronics. We sit in chairs for hours staring at blank screens, daydreaming of people and events with histories no one else knows about because we've created them. We are plotters, pantsters, begrudging synopsis writers. We are procrastinators, expert in deadline chaos, list makers, and make work go-getters. We are our worst critics and our biggest supporters. We are pajama lovers, comfy clothes huggers, pot of coffee brewers that often go cold writers. Or tea, you can say tea. We are worriers. We're taskmasters. We check our email every second after submitting kind of writers. We are lovers of bookstores, coffee shops, and libraries. We are parents and spouses and caregivers who take on too much for too many, always placing ourselves last. We are encouragers, believers, supporters of other writers with dreams like our own. We are exhausted. We are tired. We are worn down, worn out, unsure if the dream we've carried for years can now carry us. We are writers who have cried over our stories, over our careers, over our dreams, and those tears could fill a bathtub that then run over to cover the tiles we've placed in the middle of the night as fears, worries, dreams, plots, characters, submissions, they've all kept us up too many nights in a row. We're nervous authors who bumble over storylines and plots when asked about what our story's about, whose tongues trip over details and characters, who know that less is more, but more is really what we all want to talk about. We are people with the best career in the world, who follow their heart and passion, who don't give up even when everything else falls apart. We are emotional eaters and drinkers. We celebrate and sympathize with wine and chocolate. We enable, but we can be a kick in the pant type of friend too. We keep a daily word count, use Scrivener for accountability, and tell the world when we've met our goals. When we don't, we blame it on Facebook or kids or life in general, when really we needed a break. We guilt ourselves more than we should. We binge watch and say it's research, and that is okay. We tell people, I'm just a writer, when really we're so much more than that. We are kick-ass writers who took the step and believed when everyone else is too afraid to try. We are tellers of stories, stories readers love to get lost in, stories readers want to know more of. We are someone who is living their dream, who refuses to give up, and who denies all the naysayers. We push ourselves too much, too hard, and too far. But even when we fall, we pick ourselves back up. Because what else are we going to do? We are writers.
I want to go back and reflect on a few things from Steena's amazing keynote talk, and that is 307 rejections for a single book. That is long-term. That is belief in yourself in the face of so much rejection. That is persistence. That is patience. And that is professionalism. Now, she ended up self-publishing that same book and sold a crap ton of copies of that book because it was an awesome book, because she also applied that same dedication and effort to the craft of becoming the best writer she could be. It's obvious that she's also applied the same amount of determination to become the most savvy author in terms of understanding the business of writing and publishing. It's well-rounded, well thought out, well planned. And I know through a discussion with Steena that she, like me, is a pantser, although she uses a term called the headlight writer, where she kind of knows where she's going. She knows the end destination, but she's only focusing on that maybe 30, 40, 50 meters ahead on the road ahead as she's writing. I love that. That was part of a conversation we had during When Words Collide. But she also, the other thing that I think about, when you think about just how business savvy she is, and the way that she's thinking about the business of writing and publishing, is she decided upon a publisher on which one to go with when she had numerous offers on the table after they saw how hugely successful she was and said, yes, we want that. She decided on a publisher for that one book, not based on who offered her the most money, but who would get her in front of the most readers. Patience, practice, persistence, All of those things. Things that Steena worked really, really hard at. And she worked hard at that because she believed in herself. And I love that she's telling you, dear listener, and all writers who listen to that keynote, of course, to believe in yourself, because nobody is going to believe in you the way that you believe in you. So it has to start with you. So those are my reflections for Steena's keynote. I'm looking forward to having her back on as a guest. There'll be links, as I said, in the show notes at starkreflections.ca to that, and an automated transcript of her keynote as well as a link to my previous interview with her on this podcast. Now, this episode was brought to you by the awesome patrons of the Stark Reflections podcast. I want to say thank you so much to all the patrons who support this podcast over at patreon.com/starkreflections, and also to let you know that I had recorded the sessions, many of the sessions I was in, at least the ones that I had produced myself, and I will be providing a video of the presentations that I gave at When Words Collide. There's one on working with bookstores and libraries, which I've talked about because it's been the topic of a few previous episodes of this podcast, about author branding for 2021, and of course, one of my common themes lately, Wide for the Win. So again, there will be the videos as well as the audio available for the patrons at the appropriate levels. So you can listen to the audio if you want, or if you want, you can watch and you can see the slides and the pretty pictures that I put together to go with my words. Some of the content, those videos, should be available probably in 6+ months over on the YouTube channel for When Words Collide, because I believe they are going to take as many of those pre-recorded things and put them up there, but I wanted my patrons to get access to them first. So thank you, dear patrons, and thank you, dear listener, for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. So just coming up in a few days, because it's Tuesday, August 17th, 2021, as I'm recording this. In a few days, you'll get the episode 207, which is the regular weekly release of the podcast. So thank you so much for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can leave comments over at starkreflections.ca or at me on Twitter. I'm at Mark Leslie. See you in just a few days, I suppose. So until then, here's wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.